Breaking the gray.
Sarah, we're back again.
We're back.
I know. We're like racing towards the end of another year, which is crazy, isn't it? Doesn't it feel like we just were here in November and December? I feel like it was just yesterday.
I know.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's all downwards from now.
It is. I mean, and it's especially for you because it's colder, and you're now it snow's coming hopefully, and hopefully we get some rain because it's been dry here. But we have a new guest, and I think our guest is near you, right? Is our guest in England?
That's it.
I'm
We have
in Guildford,
Antonia
yes, in
from
England.
Coherent Health.
Great.
Yes, and we've got 2 Brits, 2 against 1 today, Russ.
Very
I
happy.
know. So, Sarah, who is our guest?
So we actually have a guest. We have a subject that we haven't covered yet, Russ, in all of our podcasts, and it's something that I've realised that we have missing, and it's the subject of parasites. Although I'm going to introduce Antonia, of course, who has a website called Coherent Health, where she covers a lot of things to do with holistic health and nutrition. But I've specifically asked her to talk a little bit about parasites today because I was saying to her before, parasites.
Yes.
I was saying to her before we came on, we should have had this for the Halloween episode. We're a little bit late.
Yeah,
Right.
It is an important topic, and it's something that I think people don't consider so much. I don't want to name drop, but actually when I went to see Dave Asprey and our colleague Paul and I went to record him, and he said that he was deliberately drinking parasites in order to initiate his immune system.
Sounds like a
which is
horror
kind of-
film.
Yeah, I
It's-
mean,
it's
I've heard about that.
horrible.
I still have to look into the details of it, but I did hear people do that.
Well, you can tell us, Antonia, the kind of different parasites that we have. But actually activating the immune system is one thing, but maybe let's have a bit of a chat about the detrimental ones because, it's a topic that most people don't really want to think about. But how much of a problem is it, and what are we talking about?
So first off, hello everyone. I'm Antonia. I'm a herbalist and nutritional advisor, and I have my own private practice called Coherent Health. And I like to focus a lot on a few different things, mainly, emotional stress, nutrition, and toxins. And parasites, of course, falls into the category of toxins. So there's to start with, the definition of a parasite is pretty much an organism that lives in a host and pretty much feeds upon the nutrients of the host. So that leaves you nutrient deficiencies and many other problems. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to parasites. So the first one would be that you can only get parasites if you go to third world countries, and that is very false, because actually most people have some kind of parasites. It's not them, that are kind of like the evil organisms, on their own. It's about the balance of the body. So, if you're constantly, stressed and anxious and you're consuming a lot of super processed foods and, like very sugary snacks and stuff like that, that will make you more prone to actually have an overgrowth of parasites in your body. Because what happens is actually parasites and yeast, they are kind of the cleaners in nature. They actually are there to break down, decaying matter, basically. So if you're dealing with any kind of pathogenic overgrowth, then that will be, actually we have to look at the root cause of why it got, to that point in the first place. So actually, 12%, it's estimated that 12% of Americans actually are dealing with an infection of a parasite that's found in cats, which is called Toxoplasma gondii. So yeah, parasites are quite a big issue, but a lot of people, like you said, they're just kind of scared of the topic. They're scared to actually realize that, oh, maybe I actually have a lot of different organisms growing inside my body. So yeah.
And with parasites, because it sounds like a horror movie, and it sounds like something like from Alien, where you don't want this thing growing in your stomach. And I've seen, I give my dog things for heartworms and tapeworms, but I'm wondering, are there good parasites that we have in our body? Are there things that we need, or the parasites we need in there?
Yeah, so that's that goes back to what I was saying, that it kind of goes back to, okay, is your body in a toxic state? Then now the parasites have a place to overgrow. In general, we need, we have more bacteria than human cells in our body, actually. So it's the same. We have yeast, so like candida. A lot of people think that candida comes from the outside, and it's like this evil organism, but actually we already have candida as part of our structure. So it's the same with parasites. If you're healthy and balanced, then parasites shouldn't be an issue, even if we do have them, because actually it's only like about 30% of parasites are actually visible with the human eye. The rest of them are microscopic. So yeah. So yes, they are very important for the balance.
I read a really fascinating thing about TB and the bug that causes that. And actually, that may be how humans have evolved such intelligence. There are certain chemicals and things that are released and the body has to respond in different ways. And, we have evolved with these bugs for essentially, for as long as humans have been around. So when does it actually become a problem, Antonia? I mean, what do you see in your clinic that would kind of cause you to instigate some kind of program?
Yeah, so there are many symptoms that parasites can cause. When it comes to the symptoms, of course, it's not always just one cause necessarily, but they can cause stuff like skin rashes or skin issues in general, digestive complaints, anxiety and depression actually as well, because parasites, they are actually, they are actual creature with, they think and they have their own mind and they have their own energetic chakras and everything. So they can control actually how we react in our mood. So a lot of people can actually deal with depression and not know where it's coming from, but it can actually be caused by parasites. The same with food craving. So if someone constantly craves a lot of refined sugar and just processed snacks, I can't even call them food really, then that would also make me think that they might have an issue with parasites, because yeah, it's pretty much you're feeding the parasites, you're not actually feeding yourself.
That's right. Who is it that actually wants that midnight snack? Is it you, or is it the kind of creatures that you're hosting? It's a very real question, because like you say, these creatures obviously have their own agenda, and they need to be fed. So, if you have someone who is totally addicted to sugar, like certainly like, let's say, candida, and there are probably a lot of other bugs that want that as a food form.
Exactly. And it's interesting you say, the midnight snack as well, because actually parasites are more active at night as well. So sometimes people might feel that, their symptoms, their health symptoms might flare up at night. And also, we just passed the full moon, a couple of days ago. And I actually wanted to talk about the full moon and parasites connection, because parasites work in cycles. So the way they reproduce in the body, the way they even influence how you feel, they're actually a lot more active around full moon, because we are actually we have more serotonin and less melatonin around that time, and it's the perfect environment for them. So that's also why a lot of people might feel more anxious or irritable, or again have health issues that are more enhanced around the full moon. So it's really interesting stuff.
You have more serotonin and melatonin at full moon. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Why is that?
So I don't remember exactly the whole system of it, but it's because it goes back to, the whole planet being influenced by, the moon. Like the oceans and all the water bodies on the planet are influenced by the moon, and they change around it. It's the same with, women's cycles. Everything works in, 28 days and, the connection to the moon. So it kind of, that's kind of how it functions as well with the parasites.
We'll have to look that up and see if we can find out why that is, because I mean, obviously, we talk a lot about circadian biology on the show, and how people are affected by the sun and, the sun at different times of day. And I have tried to look at, like, what happens in a full moon? Because there are lots of other things that happen in full moon, like, their hospital cases go up and stroke cases go up. And really people are not entirely sure how that happens. And you're right, there's people like Rudolf Steiner and people like that who have a more esoteric view. But I hadn't actually heard that those different neurotransmitters change at different times. So that's a new piece of information. So great. Thanks for that.
Especially the moon, right? I mean, the moon is interesting. I mean, I know we've talked a lot about photobiomodulation with the sun, but that the moon triggers this is a little bit different too. I mean, what do we do with that, Sarah?
And even moonlight's very interesting too, because it's reflected sunlight, but which part of the spectrum is reflected? That there is some red light, but there's other stuff there, because obviously historically, I mean, people are called lunatics because you do change your mental state according to the phases of the moon,
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's
especially werewolves.
Yeah.
Especially werewolves. Yeah. They're very affected by the full
Yes.
moon. So actually I had a blood test, Antonia, and they had parasites like flagged up, although it was pretty nondescript. It just had a red flag come up. I don't actually know what to do with that, apart from to have a little bit of black walnut. I mean, what do you suggest? What is your program for people who suspect they might have it? Is it a test, or do you think it's enough that people can kind of go by cravings? And two, what do you actually do about it?
When it comes to parasites, it's actually quite tricky because there's not actually an accurate test out there that can actually show you exactly where they are and what do you have. Like, obviously you have, stool tests and blood tests and stuff like that. And I have a lot of experience with that, even from my childhood, because my mom used to always take me every year, do full, blood test panel and stool test. I pretty much learned how to do my stool testing for parasites since I was like 11. And I did find, although I was dealing with a lot of health issues at the time, I had really bad eczema and just inflammation galore. I never actually had a positive stool test for parasites, and I was like, okay, that's a bit weird. Everyone's saying it's probably parasites, but I never get to be positive. And then I found out that actually parasites have their own cycles of reproduction in the body. So if you're testing, for example, just a stool, doing a stool test over a few days, how it's usually done, it's not actually, you might not actually get the eggs in there from the parasites or the actual parasite. So a lot of the times it's kind of looking at the symptoms, the whole holistic approach, how the person is feeling, how is their nutrition, and kind of putting everything together. And of course, I always recommend that, doing a parasite cleanse is great. It's just important to actually do it in a structure that's not too harsh on the body, because I feel like, detox protocols have become such a big thing recently in, social media, that everyone just wants, okay, I'm going to do this super intense protocol for like a week and take all these herbs or whatever it is, and then everything is sorted. And then, it just doesn't work like that, because that will put a lot of pressure on your liver, your drainage organs. So you have to start slowly and to support those organs first. But I really like like black walnut hull, olive leaf, I find it really good. Like wormwood. And there's also a brand called Cellcore, which I really love. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of them.
Funny enough, I only just heard of them because I met a representative at the Biohackers in Miami, and I hadn't heard before.
Oh,
and she was telling me about all of these brilliant products, and I hadn't heard of it before.
Yeah, I really love their company, just because they actually work. Like, I've tried, both on my clients and on myself, probably, well, mainly on myself. I was like the lat rab, trying hundreds of supplements, and just to kind of see, how everything works. But they have actual collection of supplements specific for parasites, and I found them to work really well, because when it comes to parasites, you don't only have the intestinal ones. That's what that's the misconception, that a lot of people think that you only have them growing in your gut and colon and all that stuff. But they can actually grow in any organ in the body. As scary as that sounds,
yeah.
You can literally...
I was going to say, Antonia, like I read somewhere that there's parasites in your eyebrows.
Yes, so I think they are called, oh God, I forgot their name. I remember I saw a picture of them under like a microscope, and they look pretty cute. They look like pets on your eyebrow, right? I don't remember the name, but yes, we do have, bacteria pretty much growing everywhere, both inside our body and on our skin. And sometimes with that parasite that actually, mentioned in the eyebrows and eyelashes and other hair follicles, they can actually cause issues and cause rashes and stuff. But again, it goes back to if that even happens, that means there's a deeper gut issue in the body. But
Interesting.
going back to the parasites in different organs, you can actually have so like parasites like roundworms, which are really common. They can actually reproduce in the lungs. So it's like this whole cycle where they reproduce in the lungs, and then they go, pretty much everywhere else in the body. And there's also, different parasites that can grow in the brain. That's a lot more rare, and it's mostly if you eat, like uncooked pork and stuff like that.
I did read recently too, though, that like with the last hurricane that hit Florida, that there was a rise because the water levels were so high, but there was a rise in this parasite in the brain. That there's an issue with this parasite that's common in Florida that now is becoming more problematic after the hurricane for people getting this parasite in their brain.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's really a thing. And I think when it comes to actual, supplements and herbs they use, like for example, if you take only capsules or only there's a supplement that I like from Cellco Organic, it's called Para One, which is a Mimosa pudica herb that basically turns, when you put in water, it just expands. It's like psyllium husk or like, okra. You get that mucilage in there. And that is really great because it pulls the parasites, it paralyzes them, kills them, and then pulls them out. But that would only work on the actual digestion. If you really want to get to the other organs and, the cells and tissues in the body, then I really like tinctures of, different antiparasitic herbs, because those can actually go more into the bloodstream and work more like on the whole system.
Is there anything that that we can do to prevent parasites, like mouth breathing versus nose breathing? Are there things that we can do to prevent any parasites entering our body?
I think there's stuff like, washing your hands, making sure you drink filtered water as much as possible. Unfortunately, there's a lot of parasites coming from raw fish, so it's pretty bad news for people who like sushi. I think that those are kind of the things that we should do, and just also cooking the food. I get, I know the ancestral and also biohacking community, there's this big thing that we like eating raw liver. And I think, well, with the liver, I haven't heard so many, issues with parasites, but I think, in general, it's good to kind of cook the food. And just keep your body balanced.
You were saying really that these parasites, I mean, really, even if you do eat it in whatever, if you're doing some mental thing like Liver King, eating raw liver or raw testicles or whatever he's eating, I think the point is if your body is healthy, you should be able to deal with it, with most things. So it's not even so much as what you're taking in, it's the state of your body once you've ingested these things. So really what I got from what you said before is you have to support your body systems first.
Exactly. Yes. You need to have, the exercise and the nutrient dense foods, and actually working on, releasing stress and, trauma and all these things, because all these things, like if you're always stressed, if you're eating processed foods, and just not living in balance with nature, really, that can all cause inflammation in the body and toxin overload. So, that you are right. It's very important to keep your body balanced.
And what about coffee enemas? Do you ever recommend that dose? Because I had a friend who would swear by doing coffee enemas. Russ, your face again. But honestly, this is a thing, because if you've got these parasites in your system, this may be a way to deal with it. I don't know what you think about that, because you said it's pretty hardcore.
Yeah, coffee enemas are great. I think I always recommend, especially if you're doing it the first time, I recommend to do a professional, just so you can get an idea, how it all works and all that stuff. I wouldn't overdo it. Like, I've seen people do coffee enemas like every 2 days for many weeks. And that is just, in my opinion, that's excessive. Because, we have a microbiome in the colon as well. And, that would really kind of mess up with that. But yes, coffee enemas are great. I've also seen coffee enemas with like coconut oil, and, other like even probiotics to add back in there and actually balance the colon. And I think thinking of coffee enemas, they work really well on liver detoxification. And sometimes some people can get liver flukes, which are parasites that, they kind of look like almond flakes. I don't know how to describe them, but they're like flat parasites that can actually get stuck in the bile ducts. So the coffee enemas can actually help with removing them and, just kind of helping the bile flow.
Okay. What do you think then about a maintenance, for someone who is reasonably healthy, just asking for a friend, but, what would be like a good monthly schedule to do? Would it be to do like the coffee enemas and get the tinctures, or what's your kind of recommendation?
So what I normally recommend, even in the program that I built, Coherent Health, so it's basically, I will start by focusing on the drainage, so actually supporting your liver and your colon and all those things, making sure you poop, because that is a big thing. I've seen so many people jump into parasite cleanses and they're pooping maybe once a week, and that's literally it's just making the fire even worse, because now you have all these toxins being released from the parasites that have nowhere to go. But yeah, I would definitely, recommend the cell core products to start with, and starting slow. Like, whenever you start with any supplements, any antiparasitic herbs, it's always important to start slow and build up. And usually I like to do a bit of a higher dose around the full moon, because again, that's when, they're most active. So it's good to kind of hit them a bit harder around that time.
See, this is the new version of the werewolf story, and but the werewolf is you become a giant worm. Did either of you see Heidi Klum's Halloween costume?
No.
Antonia, I thought maybe you would have seen it. She was a giant.
Sorry,
she was a giant worm, like a giant parasite. Yeah. But that's it. Like full moon, all the parasites come out of your body. It would be interesting if you flash a light on something, all of a sudden it's like they're all parasites. That's really, to blow my mind, Antonia. I'm gonna stay indoors now during. I'm gonna bathe, hot water, bathe, coffee enemas during a full moon for sure.
Yes. And also, like infrared sauna is really great for parasites, and, doing it around the full moon. And whenever you do any parasite cleanse, I definitely recommend sauna in general. But if you do have access to infrared sauna, that's even better, just to help with, the removal of all those toxins. Because actually parasites, they can actually hold around 6 times their weight in toxins. So they can actually hold onto viruses, and they can hold onto heavy metals and a lot of other toxins. So what happens is, when you try to kill them, of course they're a parasite, they try to stay in their host for as long as they can, even 20, 30 years sometimes. So if they see that you're actually trying to go after them, they're going to start releasing those toxins and make you feel a bit worse. So, that's another thing, the Hertzheimer reaction. A lot of people, when they start, any kind of cleanses, which again, you have to do slowly. If they feel any kind of reaction, even like mild ones, they think, oh my God, I'm having, side effect to this thing, and I'm going to stop. But actually is just, even to a mild level, it's part of the process of actually getting rid of these toxins. So
yeah, it's the defense mechanism of the bug. Yeah, that's an interesting take. It's difficult then to tell whether you're overdoing it with the tinctures or whether it's a healing reaction. So how do you tell them apart?
So I think if it's something really severe where you're literally feeling, really like having a lot of skin rashes, and you're just not having any energy to, get out of bed and stuff, that is a sign that you've overdone it. And I always say to just slow down, or either stop the protocol for a while, or just, just take a smaller dose and really go hard on saunas, supporting your liver, with some dandelion root, burdock root, stuff like that. Because that is basically a sign that you are detoxing at a faster rate than your body can basically remove the toxins. So
and what about if it's just the reaction from the bugs? What is that? Is that more just like a low level tiredness, or how does that manifest?
What, when you're actually doing the cleanse, or just in general?
Just when you're doing the cleanse, I can imagine that if you start feeling something, you don't know actually whether it's a side effect from the herb. You don't know whether it's the kind of bugs fighting back. You don't know whether you've overdone it. How do you kind of sort all of that out?
Yeah, so with that, I definitely say, if someone is feeling really, really sick, then I would probably say, stop. But if it's just stuff like, okay, you might get a bit of a skin rash here and there, or you might feel like your stomach is, like one of my clients said, what did he say? He said that it just sounded like a battlefield for a few hours. Stuff like that. I really like.
That's a good way to describe it, Antonia. That's a good, safe way to describe it.
Yes, I really like to add binders into the picture. So binders are basically, different supplements that can actually act like a magnet to pull those toxins out. So my favorite from all the fancy ones I've tried, I always just recommend a good high quality activate charcoal. If you're dealing, if you're in the situation where you're dealing with all these reactions, then the activate charcoal will be your friend, because it will actually help to minimize the effects and just to bind to the byproducts that the parasite is basically releasing.
In like a capsule, or just like a little in the powder?
You can find it in capsules. I found that it works a bit better if you just take the powder, like a teaspoon, of powder. Yeah,
that's cool. And have you had any like really difficult case studies with this, or someone that their problem has been down to just the parasites, or do you find it's kind of generally goes with other things?
Yeah, so I've actually had someone who had not too crazy, health issues, but they were dealing with some asthma and sometimes a lot of bloating and stuff. And initially when I put them on the parasite cleanse, we said, okay, let's just, rule this out. And they didn't think they had any parasites. And then the next day they sent me a picture. I like to ask people for pictures of parasites that come out. It's just part of my practice, I guess. But he sent me a picture of, the 60 centimeters tapeworm.
Oh my goodness.
And, there's so many allergies and things that start resolving straight after. Because the other thing with parasites is that if you have it, they can actually learn to evade your immune system. They can actually build these proteins on their surface, so your body doesn't recognize them as like a danger or whatever. So I've seen quite a few cases where things really even like mysterious symptoms, as we call them, sometimes they just resolved after parasites came out. Or I guess at least the big ones, because again, most of the time you don't really see them because they're microscopic. But when it comes to tapeworms and roundworms and stuff like that, you can actually physically see them out.
Well, that's amazing. You kind of think that's more like Victorian England, where people have got tapeworms and things, don't you? I mean, you don't really think that someone's going to have a massive tapeworm. Or there's that horrible book by Irving Welsh where the bloke is controlled by his tapeworm. That's awful.
But also tapeworms, I know I don't know why I've read all about parasites, but it's, Antonia, I am like well documented and prepared for your interview today. But I also read, and I haven't had children or myself have had a tapeworm, but to get a tapeworm to come out of you is you sit over a cup of spoiled milk and then the tapeworm will come out. Not that I've tried this.
Wait, you sit on the milk, what, with your butt?
You have a cup of spoiled milk under you, and then you sit on it, and then it will, the tapeworm will come out.
This is why you're
I think
not
that's kind of like
wives' tale, probably. It's a wives' tale. I don't know what wife was working on that, but it's a wives' tale.
You know what? That actually reminds me of, I grew up in Romania, so I know a lot of kind of folklore, kind of, remedies and stories and stuff, but there used to be this tale, country in the countryside in Romania, that sometimes if the farmers were out with the sheep or the cattle or whatever and they fell asleep, they might have a snake go through their throat into their stomach, and you actually have to have like a cup of warm milk and just keep it like in front of your mouth, and it's gonna come out. It kind of reminds me of that, and I question the efficacy of both of them.
I just love that like someone's actually has a cup in front of their mouth and they're sitting on one, trying to get the worms and the snakes out of them. Poor person.
I know. The thing with that, I don't think it would work anyway, because the tapeworm would have a lot more, nutrients inside of you than to be worried about,
Right,
a
right.
cup of.
It's feeding off of your last night's dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but to Sarah's point, the extremes of this are quite bad, right? Like, and so, but it's keeping your immune system healthy, keeping yourself healthy. But they're also just randomly, right? That you're not things you can't control here, that these parasites could take over.
Yeah, exactly. I always recommend in my practice to, even if you feel like, you're really healthy and you don't have any kind of major issues, it's good to do maybe once or twice a year, just a cleanser on the full moon or something like that, just to make sure that, you're keeping things under control and there's nothing too crazy like a 60 centimeters tapeworm growing inside of you.
Yes.
So...
Yeah, I think it's best to rule that one out. Do you do like fasting and everything around it, or do you just do like take the tinctures?
Yeah, so usually I recommend, mainly just the tinctures and the different, herbs that I use in my practice. I think the fasting is, the fasting is a bit complex sometimes, because some people just might not be able to take the fasting, based on their physiology. If they're already nutrient deficient, because they've had parasites or they just haven't been, feeding themselves right, and I feel the fasting would just add extra stress on that. So I like to just combine it with the herbs and, just like a healthy, nutrient dense diet.
That's good to know, because I think people, again, we've had some people on talking about different fasts, and fasting is kind of like you say, in the biohacker world, there tends to be crazes or things which, get a bit more traction. And at the moment, this whole thing, I think intermittent fasting, is more doable for people, but having like prolonged fasts or even dry fasts, and I also think that it should be more person specific, because there are a lot of differences between people that would make them more or less receptive to doing fasts. I hate doing fasting. Maybe I just don't like doing fasting, and I'm always trying to find an excuse not to do.
I've been fasting now for the last couple of years, and I try to do like every other Monday, just to hit the reset button, and it tends to really work for me. I feel so much better 2 days after a fast, and I think I sometimes have to reset my whole body. I really enjoy it. I just do water and I'll drink coffee. I set my own rules to fasting, but I'll do coffee and water. That's about it, though. I don't eat anything.
Yeah, I think like Sarah said, it's really kind of bio-individual, based. I think, for example, for me, I can't do prolonged fast, because the last time I tried to do a 4-day fast, which wasn't even like, a full fast, which is water, I had like some fermented root vegetable juices. It was too much for me, and I passed out, and I was just like, no, we can't do this. I think it really depends on your body. So yeah.
Yeah, good to hear, because I also can't stand doing it. I start to get shaky. That could be a blood sugar issue.
Yeah, especially for us women, it can be a bit, harsh. So I feel like I do find that men in general tend to do a lot better with fasting, especially prolonged fast. I think for like female hormones, you have to be quite careful.
Yeah, cool.
And I imagine that probably it's a better time in the month too for female fasting.
Yeah, definitely don't fast around, your menstruation, because that would just be way too much.
Interesting. Depends how aligned you are with the full moon. And I wonder if and I wonder how, if your cycles align with the moon, whether that's a predictor of better health or not, or whether it's...
I think it is, to be honest, from what I've been observing. I mean, it can really depend. I think it's a mixture of, I guess probably that's for a different conversation, but yeah, it depends on how much you're actually connected to the, to the earth, how much grounding you're doing, how, again, your nutrition, if you're actually getting the right nutrients in and stuff. But yeah, it's a very interesting one. I've been following that, even in myself, for over the last few years, and it's interesting to see when it actually syncs perfectly with the moon. I'm like, oh, okay, I've been doing something right this month.
Or your sister, like that's the. I have 3 daughters, and I have a house full of synced females, and it's a different. It's just one of those times a month where I'm like, oh, great, it's a full moon now. I can't go outside because everyone's covered in parasites, so I'm screwed. I have to stay in the house. So, yeah, I'm just kidding. Just kidding though. Yeah, it is interesting. Like those are all things that, like, if there were no moon, our planet would be very different. Things would be very different. It's really fascinating how important that is to cycles and everything. So.
Oh yeah, there's a whole science of it. All the permaculture and, like I say, a lot of biodynamics is all. There's whole farming methods and everything associated with the moon. So I'm not surprised that there are these differences with our physiology. It's just not something I don't think it's properly investigated. There's not much reason to look at it. Maybe, there's not dollars behind looking at it right now, unless we find a drug.
If you lived on Jupiter, it would be very confusing too, I think, with all the moons on Jupiter.
Oh yeah.
How many's it got?
I think
so many parasites.
What you said, well, I think there's not enough money, well, not that it's not enough money, but the big corporations, they were more focused on producing like mass, the mass production, where they don't care even the basic foundation of how to protect nature, let alone the biodynamic agricultural practices and stuff like that, which is really sad. But I think, the biodynamic way is pretty much going back to our ancestral way, being connected to nature and,
Yeah, and and this is what we're always saying on the show: take responsibility for yourself, live as much as you can with, within your own ethics and your own morals, and try as best you can to kind of sync with nature. Really, that's all you can do. And self-observation is something as well. Like you're saying, these things are very interesting. Are you plotting your cycle? Can you match it up with the full moon? I mean, this is the way that this is true science. This is why we call it rebel science, because it's actual observation and experimentation, which is the fundamental, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. These are things that, I always tell people, you are your best doctor and your best healer. Any other practitioner, any other person around you can only guide you, but ultimately you know yourself best, and you should know yourself best, so yeah.
Let's leave people on some tips and tricks then, Antonia. What is your kind of best tip? I mean, I know you already said about maintenance, and that was super cool, actually, when you said, maybe once or twice a year, do the cleanse. But is there anything else you can kind of leave our listeners with that, that's a takeaway on our parasites?
Yes, definitely. I think, again, it goes back to actually eating, whole foods and kind of reducing, or it's hard to say fully remove, something, but reduce the really processed foods, because those are a big cause for gut dysbiosis, and, a big cause for why the parasites might even overgrow in the first place, because they have stuff to feed on, when you give them all these, amazing artificial sweeteners and all these things, they love that. And also just working on actually the mindfulness part. So making sure that you have a meditation practice or whatever it is for you to soothe your mind, because the stress, it's kind of like a two-way street. So if you're overly stressed all the time, that can cause inflammation and cause more parasite overgrowth. And then again, if you're dealing with parasites, they will cause stress and anxiety and irritability, just because they're in there and feeding, on your nutrients. So yeah, I think the nutrition part is very important. And, even if you just start with like one herb, so for example, like wormwood or olive leaf or anything like that, it would be a good start. If that's all you can access and you don't have access to, Cellcore or any kind of like fancy supplements, getting like the classic kind of herbs to start with would be a good way to make sure that you can deal with any kind of underlying infections.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you. I have got some of that tincture. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for coming on. Tell people where we can find you.
Yes, so you can find me at my website, coherent-health.com. I'm also Coherent Health on Instagram and pretty much all social media. I also launched an online program earlier this year, which includes a full breakdown of how to deal with parasites and all that stuff, but so much more. We go through 3 pillars, which I believe are very important for thriving health. So that will be the emotional stress and trauma, learning how to reduce that in the body, the nutrition side of things, which includes both, the quality of the food and the water you drink, how different nutrients work with each other in the body, and then the toxins part, which involves like heavy metals, parasites, environmental toxins, and all that stuff.
That's great. Well, we'll put it up on our website. Thank you so much for coming on. I mean, it is a fascinating topic. It is a little bit gruesome to think about it, but it's important. And like you say, if you have that awareness, then you can deal with these things. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. I love talking to you guys. And yeah, looking forward to seeing the episode out.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you, Antonia. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Have a lovely rest of your day. See you.
Bye.
Breaking the gray.